Welcome. I'm so excited to be here with you today as part of this amazing Compassionate Action Conference. And thank you for choosing to be here for Why Compassion Breaks Down Under Pressure. As we're getting started, I'd love for you to take a moment and share in the chat your name, where you're joining from, and anything else you'd like to share as your introduction to the rest of us. My name is Cherry Jacobs, or CJ Pruitt, and I am joining you from Lafayette, Colorado, in the United States. I identify as she, hers, and for those of you who may not be able to see me as we share this time together, I am a white woman with an olive complexion. I have short graying hair. I wear glasses, and today I am wearing a navy blue shirt with uh, eardrop per eardrop earrings, mother of pearl eardrop earrings. This session is about 50 minutes long, and during our time together, here's what we're going to cover. I'm going to introduce you to two major orientations or patterns that shape how all of us experience the world. I'm going to talk a bit about the brain, the biology behind what happens when compassion slips away. Then I'm going to ask you to think of a moment in your own life when you felt that slip. And the sharing I'll invite you to do today will be in the form of dropping a word in the chat or asking a question at the end. I'll also be following up on any questions that we don't have time to answer. So if you can include your email in the chat along with your question, that'd be great. So again, welcome. I want to start with something real. I have a neighbor I genuinely care about, but who has very different political views than I do. And lately, when I see them coming, I find myself looking for a way to avoid them, not because of who they are, but because of what they represent to me right now. I shut down before we even speak. And I ask myself, is that really how I want to be? And that thought is immediately followed by, if I'm doing this as one person, what does that mean for how I'm showing up in the rest of my community and in the world? So today, we're going to look more closely at that moment. What's actually happening for me, and likely for all of us in moments like that, when we lose our compassion, when we stop at the surface and we shut down. We're going to look at what's happening in those moments, why it's happening, and what becomes possible when we understand it. So before we go further, I want to share this quote that many of you may have heard, and it's commonly attributed to Einstein. We can't solve problems using the same thinking that created them. That's really at the root of today's presentation, because most of us have been taught to work on our reactions, but not to see what's actually shaping them. And so we can't make the change. We can't shift from fear and mistrust back towards compassion. So as we dive in, I want you to try to hold this quote close. We can't solve problems using the same thinking that created them, because our losing access to compassion during times of pressure is a big problem. So in 2007, I was fully immersed in a career in maternal and child public health. While I loved the work, I felt a disconnect between it and the challenges I was seeing everywhere in the communities where I was working and living. One day, I was listening to a national public radio interview with a woman who had just written a book called The Real Wealth of Nations. And that woman was Riane Eisler. Riane Eisler is a social scientist, a cultural historian, and an author who has spent 5 decades developing a framework for understanding how the patterns in our societies shape everything, from our economies to our relationships to our compassion, to our capacity for compassion. Her work is the foundation of everything we're exploring today. In that NPR interview, Dr. Eisler described how we can and how we must create economic systems that are based on care and caregiving for each other and for the planet. I was so moved by the simplicity of her solution to creating a better world that it launched the journey I've been on for the past 2 decades to understand how we can all apply Dr. Eisler's domination partnership social lens to help us address our society's most devastating issues. So, Riane Eisler describes two different ways all aspects of our lives can be oriented. She named them domination based and partnership based. Domination based patterns rely on power over others. So you're either dominating or being dominated. There always has to be a winner and there always has to be a loser. And you don't want to be the loser. There are rigid rankings and hierarchies of power that are reinforced by fear and control. And violence is seen as inevitable and glamorized in stories and media. Nature is seen as a resource to be consumed. In partnership systems, on the other hand, power is shared and used to support community. So it's a we mentality rather than a me mentality. Caring and connecting behaviors are seen as positive and are highly honored. Sharing prosperity is a goal, so the idea of lifting our neighbors up with us. And nature is valued and nurtured. These are not labels for people, these are names of patterns, shared ways of relating that we've all been shaped by. And once you start to see them, you start to see them everywhere. So back to Einstein's quote, we can't change problems using the same thinking that created them. This is key because compassion breaks down when we're inside domination-based patterns that we don't even see yet. And these patterns shape how we respond without us even realizing it. And compassion isn't just emotional. Compassion is also biological. So when we feel connected and caring, our frontal lobe stays online. That's the part of our brain that's responsible for empathy, curiosity, and care. We can think clearly. We can stay curious. We can find our compassion. But when something feels like a threat, the lower brain takes over. This is where fight, flight, fear, and fawn thrive. The lower brain is older, it's faster, and its only job is to protect us. When we're in our lower brain, our thinking narrows, our openness closes, and compassion becomes harder to access. Not because we don't care, but because of the state that we're in. The heart is still there. The wiring for care is still there, but the conditions we're in determine whether or not we can reach it. So now I want to take a moment to experience this together. What happens when we get stuck in our lower part of the brain, when we're experiencing a pattern that is shaped by domination? So I'm going to ask you to think of a situation in your own life as recently as possible, so maybe in the past few days or past few weeks, where you felt yourself start to close down when compassion slipped away. So this can be a small, everyday example like me and my neighbor. It can be something with your family. It might be a moment related to a political disagreement or something you've experienced in healthcare or in an organization that you're part of. So just take a moment, see if you can find a memory of a recent moment when you felt your compassion slipping away. Some of you may have that moment in mind, and if you do, keep remembering as many details about it as possible as I give others who may still be searching for a few more prompts. This could be something that you read online, a post from someone you've known for years that suddenly made you feel like you're a stranger to them or they're a stranger to you, or you just got really upset when you saw what they posted. And for many of us, this virtual world has become one of the most common places where we do lose our compassion. Or how about something that you saw in the news recently? Something that was important to you that was diminished or you felt it was threatened. Maybe it was a message from a friend or a family member that surprised or hurt you. So, really try to remember what that moment felt like. Try to see as many of the details as possible. So, now I want you to hold that and feel it in your body. What does that shift feel like for you? Where are you feeling it? Is your jaw clenching? Do you feel a lump in your stomach? Is your throat tightening? Where in your body are you noticing a closing sensation? And if you're willing, drop one word in the chat that describes what you're feeling as you respond to that moment when you're moving into that protection mode. Any feelings that you can share in your body? Frustration. I know for me, I get it in my jaw. That was why the first example I came up with. Great. Thank you all. Curiosity. Those words that you're describing, especially the ones that don't feel positive, that's your lower brain doing exactly what it's designed to do. So let me bring this back to my neighbor. When I feel that urge to avoid them, to look at my phone, to change direction, I can now choose to name what's happening instead. I can now choose to understand that I'm responding to my neighbor. I'm shifting into that space because I'm responding from a domination mindset that tells us differences are not to be trusted, that it's important to be right, that conflict and divisiveness are just who we are as humans. I'm responding from inside a pattern shaped by the conditions around me. And here's something that I want you to really hear. This is not a personal failing. So many of us beat ourselves up. I should be more compassionate. I shouldn't lose my temper. I should feel kinder. I should do better. But the patterns of how we react, even the ones we're ashamed of, are shaped by the larger system of domination that we're all swimming in, often without even knowing it. And here's the thing. Once we can name what's happening, then we can change what's happening. Because the narratives that are based on domination are false narratives. We are not wired for violence, control, power over each other. Remember back to how our brains work. We are wired for compassion and care. So now what? What do we actually do in those moments to refine compassion and shift to partnership? So I'm going to offer a practice. I call it the partnership pause, and it's 4 simple steps. First of all, notice the pattern. When you find yourself in that uncomfortable moment, ask yourself, is this coming from a domination-based place? Is it rooted in fear or scarcity, a pull toward control or withdrawal? Just name it. Because remember, if you can name it, you can change it. So next, check in with your body, just like we just did. Where are you holding the tension? Your jaw, your shoulders, your stomach. Emotionally, you're frustrated, so you're not being, your mind might be racing, tightness in your throat. Just notice. This is your body responding. Again, remember, because we are wired for connection. So something's pulling us away from that. And that's what your body is responding as. Third, take a moment to take a breath in through your nose and direct that air to the areas of tension in your body, and breathe that out through your mouth and take that tension with it. And if you can do that for 2 or 3 breaths, even better than just the one. And then finally, ask yourself, what is the most caring or curious next step I can take in this moment? Okay, so now let's make this real. Okay, let's walk through the partnership pause together. So I want to bring you back to that moment you were holding just a few minutes ago, the situation where compassion slipped away, the pressure, the tightening, whatever that felt like in you. Okay, take just a moment. I'm going to give you a moment to just feel that again. Remember back to where you were, or maybe since we've been talking, a different tense moment is a better memory for you. But really think about that moment when you're not being able to be based in a compassionate, caring space. Find where that tightening is, where the pressure is, where your body feels uncomfortable. Okay. Hopefully everyone's got it. Okay. So ask yourself, what's the pattern here? What am I responding to? Is it based in a domination-based paradigm? Is it based around fear? Is it rooted in scarcity? Does it have a pull towards control or making you need to withdraw? Notice the pattern, name it. Now check in with your body. Where are you holding that tension? And it could be more than one place. And then take a big breath in through your nose. Direct that air to that area of tension or areas. And a breath, exhale it out through your mouth and let that tension go. And we are doing fine on time. So I'm going to ask you to do just another second breath, and then we'll do a third. So just in through your nose. Find the tension. Exhale it out and release the tension. And then one more, just like that. Really inhale in. Let that air go to those spots where you have the tension. And then exhale out through your mouth, releasing the tension. And then ask yourself, in that moment, what could have been the most caring or curious next step I could have taken? Okay, and I'm going to ask you, if you're comfortable, to just share a thought or two about that next step. in the chat. I know for me, getting ready for this presentation, I was nervous because of the pressure to do a good job, because of the pressure to perform. And as I walked myself through the partnership pause, my most caring and curious next step was to remind myself that I'm sharing information with you all that's important and can help all of us be more grounded in compassion. So it's a gift I'm sharing rather than a pressure to perform. So, how about you? Any examples you can share about what your next step may have been? Great. Curiosity, find the curiosity. Beautiful. Ask that person a question. Ask yourself a question. Be curious. When you're curious, that keeps you grounded in your frontal lobe. When you're in a caring state, that keeps you grounded in the frontal lobe. Staying open. Beautiful. Thank you. That shift that you get with this partnership pause, that's not nothing. That is the door to compassion reopening. So, what you just practiced, that pause, that question, that slight shift, it starts small, but it does not stay small. When one person shifts how they show up in a tense moment, it changes what becomes possible for everyone else in the room. And over time, those shifts accumulate. They change relationships. They change how communities function. They change what systems are capable of holding. This is how compassion becomes not just a value we hold, but a way of being that we build together. This is how we find compassion in moments of pressure. So, admittedly, what we've talked about so far is really just the tip of the iceberg. The partnership pause with my neighbor helps me make a different choice in that moment. But what about times when the pressure you feel and your inability to access compassion is because of real harm? What about when you're experiencing aggressions or trauma based on the color of your skin or your age or your physical or intellectual differences or who you love or how you identify as a person or any of the other isms that the domination paradigm creates with its rigid rankings of human worth? What about times when there really isn't a caring and curious next step you can find toward the other person or the situation? For those moments, the partnership pause still applies, but you turn it towards yourself. Because what is the most caring and curious next step that you can do for yourself in the moment may not necessarily be to find compassion for that other person or the situation, but instead to find compassion for you. One of my favorite quotes from a old supervisor I had is that we are all works of art in progress, doing the best we can inside systems that weren't designed necessarily to help us thrive. And sometimes the most powerful act of compassion is the one you offer yourself first. So the partnership pause is just one small tool, something I developed that helps me in those tense moments when I find myself lacking compassion, and that I hope that you find useful as well. But there are so many other tools and practices for dismantling domination and shifting to partnership. And here's what I think you may find. that will be helpful about these tools. Because now that you've been introduced at a very, very high level to Riane Eisler's domination-partnership social lens, or perhaps you were already familiar with her work, but you've had that awareness deepened just a touch today, you're going to start noticing how domination shows up in places you had never seen it before, in your workplace, in your family, in healthcare, education, economics, media, politics, in the stories we tell about who we are as human beings. And once you can see it, you start asking, what would partnership look like here? So now I want to share some resources with you that will help you develop more tools of how to deal with that, how to manage and how to grow with that increased awareness of domination and the power that partnership offers us. And these connect directly to my own continuing journey of learning how to apply Riane's work to create a more compassionate world, or at least the first tool does, the first resource I'm going to share. So a little bit back to my own journey of learning how to apply Riane Eisler's cultural transformation theory to helping build a world based on care and compassion. We all have our COVID stories and how our life changed during those years. And part of my change from COVID was the burning desire to leave the work I was currently doing in public health and to focus more directly in helping nurture a partnership movement. And as part of that desire, I found myself asking, how are people using partnership in their lives and their work right now? So I reached out to Dr. Eisler and her team at the Center for Partnership Systems, who I had worked on and off with over the years in my job doing maternal and child health policy work in the federal government in the United States. And I asked if I could create a podcast to highlight those stories. And that's how I joined the world of podcasting as the producer and host of the Center for Partnership Systems Power of Partnership podcast. The podcast series launched in June 2024, and currently we have 43 episodes sharing the stories of how people around the world are dismantling domination and replacing it with partnership in all aspects of society, including our most personal, interpersonal relationships with ourselves and others. The podcast is available on both YouTube or on your favorite podcast listening library. And you can also access the full podcast library, both the video links and the audio links, on the website of the Center for Partnership Systems. And you'll see the URL there on the slide. For those of you who are not able to see the slides, it's center-for-partnership.org/the-power-of-partnership-podcast. While compassion is definitely woven through every episode of the podcast, I want to highlight 3 specific examples that explore compassion from different perspectives. Belvie Rooks is an author, educator, and human rights advocate. In Growing a Global Heart, she shares a profound and expansive vision of compassion, one that reaches across time, across generations, and across the wounds we've inherited from domination-based systems. In How Men Cry, Dexter Spitz, a spoken word artist and men's mental health advocate, describes the importance of creating compassionate spaces for men to embrace vulnerability. And in Leading from the Heart, organizational leader Gwyn Guzzo shares what it actually looks like to lead with compassion in organizational settings, the challenges, the rewards, and the courage it takes to stay in partnership when domination patterns are pulling the other way. And to learn more about Riane Eisler's cultural transformation theory itself, I want to call out these two episodes because either are excellent, either if you're new to Riane Eisler's work or if you want a quick refresher. So, episode 1, The Partnership Way with Riane Eisler, is a foundational conversation about how she developed the domination partnership framework and what it means to build cultures rooted in care and shared prosperity. In Partnership in Action with Riane Eisler and Ingraham, who is a partnership practitioner and worked deeply in the Center for Partnership Systems for many years with Riane, they highlight lessons from across the globe that show how partnership values are helping us to rethink early childhood and schooling, advancing regenerative economics and bioregional networks, and how honoring the sacred feminine and spiritual traditions are happening increasingly around the world through partnership. And for those of you who want to dive much deeper into Riane's work, these two books are most related to today's conversation, although all of her books address caring and compassionate as at their core. The Chalice and the Blade is Riane Eisler's groundbreaking work. This traces the history of domination and partnership across human societies, all the way back to the Neo-Paleolithic. This is where the framework was born. In Nurturing Our Humanity, Dr. Eisler goes much deeper into the biological foundations of compassion and how domination and partnership systems shape us at the neurological level. If today's little teaser of brain science resonated with you, then this book is a must. And I'm so excited to share this. As a gift to attendees of this conference, Dr. Eisler and the Center for Partnership Systems are offering free access to Riane Eisler's foundational online course, Changing Our Story, Changing Our Lives. This is a self-paced course that uses the domination partnership lens to help you examine the stories you've inherited about power, gender, economics, and human nature, and discover how changing these stories can change your life, your relationships, and your world. The link and password are on the slide, so please take a photo or note them now, and I will let those of you who may be listening to the presentation let you know that the link is centerforpartnership.org/changing our story changing our lives. And the password is all one word, changing our story, and in caps. All one word in caps, changing our story. And finally, I'd love to stay connected with you and help you grow in this journey to understand domination and replace it with partnership, to help us all create a world where compassion is more easily able to access and hold on to. I work with individuals, organizations, communities who are ready to go deeper through discussion groups, workshops, speaking engagements, and consulting, whose work is helping to love a better world into existence. As Bellevue Rooks beautifully says in her podcast episode, I'd love to connect. Please reach out and let's talk about how we can connect together. You can find me at https://www.cjconnections.net or reach me directly by email at cherry@cjconnections.net. That's Cherry, CHERRI, at cjconnections.net. So let me leave you with where we started and where I hope you're ending. We came here today because we care, because compassion matters to us, and because we've all had moments when it slipped away and we didn't quite understand why. Today we explored why. We looked at Riane Eisler's domination partnership social lens and how that framework helps us see the patterns that shape our capacity for compassion, often without us even knowing it. We talked about the biology, what actually happens in our brains and bodies when we feel threatened, and why compassion becomes harder to reach in those moments, not because we have failed, but because of the conditions that we're in. And we practice the partnership pause, a simple tool for those tightening moments. Notice and name it, feel it in your body, breathe it out, and then ask yourself, what is the most caring and curious next step I can take for someone else or for myself? And we looked at resources to go deeper at two different levels. First, the Power of Partnership podcast episodes, 3 that speak directly to how compassion breaks down and how we find our way back to it, and 2 that go deeper into Riane Eisler's cultural transformation theory itself. All available on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. And second, Dr. Eisler's foundational books, or at least 2 of them, The Chalice and the Blade and Nurturing Our Humanity, and the free course, Changing Our Story, Changing Our Lives, available to all of you as attendees of this conference. The link and passwords are on the resource slides, so you can have those when you get the slides downloaded. The domination patterns we've been talking about today are everywhere, and so are the partnership alternatives. The more you look, the more you'll find them. And the more you find them, the more you'll create them. So I'll leave you with this. Again, if you can name it, you can change it. Thank you so much for being here. And now I'd love to hear from you. What questions do you have? And I think if you can put them in the chat box, that would be the best, so I can be reading them aloud for folks who may not be able to see them.